So hi guys. Well, I'm falling over my words already. We have got Blake Lively's opposition to the Wayfarer's Rule 56.1 statement, and all I'm going to do here, because I did the original Wayfarer's Rule 56.1 statement, I did Blake Lively's opposition, but I spent a lot of the time, saying redacted, redacted. Now I'm just going to do the unredacted bits because we've already covered everything else, so I won't go over that again. So the bits, this is the first part that is is kind of unredacted. So anything that's highlighted is what's unredacted. This is Blake Lively. Say her statement is, in September 2022, Wayfarer proposed a partnership with Sony for co-production and co-financing of the film. Wayfarer's proposal included a requirement that 1% of the film's proceeds be donated to support survivors of domestic abuse. Plaintiff's response, that was obviously Wayfarer. It's undisputed that Wayfarer proposed a partnership with Sony to co-produce the film in September 2022. Early publicity planning for the film, Sony emphasized the need to center the underlying message of the story. Abusive relationships take many forms from all social classes. What does it take to leave and break the cycle of generational trauma and domestic violence? We need to be careful. Sony cautioned, we need to be careful not to commercialize or handle lightly. Wayfarer's response, undisputed that Sony's early publicity strategy aimed to provide context for the underlying message of abuse, but disputed that breaking the cycle of abuse was the primary or sole theme that Sony sought to emphasize. The first theme listed was women empowerment, and others included small businesses and women's friendship as a lifeline. Also disputed that Sony's publicity planning for the film avoided commercializing its themes. The publicity plan included screenings on a rooftop, events at a venue made to look like a floral shop with steampunk-style flowers, temporary heart tattoos, partner with Pinterest, oh for fuck's sake, and incorporate onesies into the campaign. Okay. So, like so I'm going to do Wayfarer's response to Lively's statement. Wayfarer Studios typically depends on separate LLCs for separate films or projects. Plaintiffs, no, sorry, this is Wayfarer's statements. Sorry, is it? Yeah, it's plaintiff's response is plaintiff is Lively. Oh, I'm getting confused now. Yeah, so yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's Wayfarer's comments, and then Lively is the plaintiff responding. Right. Okay. Now I've got that. Oh, it's so hard to orientate yourself. Okay. Wayfarer Studios typically depends on separate LLCs for separate films, etc., etc. Undisputed that the evidence cited supports defendant's assertion, but otherwise disputed as inconsistent with Heath's October 8th deposition testimony, in which he claimed to have little to no knowledge or recollection of the structure or operations of It Ends With Us movie. Stated that It Ends With Us may be a wholly owned subsidiary of Wayfarer, but that he did not have specific memory of it in the moment. Answering, I don't know, in response a question about whether Sony had an ownership interest in It Ends With Us, acknowledging that he was apparently the president of It Ends With Us movie. It Ends With Us maintained its own bank accounts and funds separate from Wayfarer and independently engaged the cast and crew of the film, only a handful of whom were also Wayfarer employees. Undisputed that the evidence supports blah blah blah, but just inconsistent with Heath's October deposition testimony, in which he claimed to have little to no. Right, okay, and we get that he wasn't sure. He said he wasn't sure. They've kept that amount redacted. Okay. Lively does respond. Oh, again, it's the same response over and again. Oh, it's at odds with undisputed that the evidence cited supports the assertion. So there is evidence that actually supports Depens's assertion, but because he said, may have said, I don't recall or I don't have knowledge about certain things, that's been cited as, well, that's inconsistent. Beyond some financing, Sarowitz was not involved in the production of the film, and he did not supervise or manage anyone at Wayfarer Studios during the filming of it. Undisputed that Sarowitz was barely involved with the film besides its funding, but disputed that Sarowitz did not supervise or manage anyone at Wayfarer Studios because the CEO and upper management answered to Mr. Sarowitz. Okay, here we go. Point 20. Blake Lively never read the book either before or during filming. Disputed. Lively informed Baldoni that when she is part of the book to film adaptations, what works better for her is not to read the book in advance because it becomes harder to see the blind spots in the film, and that she likes to look at the film as its own piece to make sure it works on its own. Lively nonetheless read several portions of the book after April 2023. You can't just read portions of the book. Oh my god, is this? You have to read the whole thing. Yeah, Jenny Slate's deposition seems to support the fact that Lively didn't read the book because Jenny Slate then also said, "Well, I didn't read the book either." Oh. Before accepting the role, Lively had reviewed an early script and thus knew that the film would include sexual content and dark themes, including domestic violence. Her response? Undisputed that Lively had read a script of the film prior to accepting the role of Lily Bloom and understood the film to involve romance, drama, trauma, and levity. Levity? What the fuck is levity? She hadn't read the book. It contains quite graphic sexual scenes, intimacy, and intimate partner violence. How is she reframing that? Why can't she just say, yeah, that's true. There is sexual intimacy. Yes, there is intimate partner violence. She's reframing it to be romance, drama, trauma, levity. Fuck off. Domestic abuse is not levity. Oh, she said that in her deposition. But yeah, I knew that there was romance. I knew that there was drama. I knew that there was trauma. I knew there was levity. I knew that there was many facets in the story. What she didn't appear to know is that there was domestic violence. Why can't she just say the words? It's like she just won't say the words. Because I suppose if she said the words, then she'd have to admit that alcohol was tone deaf as a marketing ploy. And, her floral, grab your friends, wear your florals crap was, just not a good look. Lively worked to revise the script before filming began. A written work product included frank sexual language and overtly sexual themes. For instance, in April 2023, Lively sent Baldoni a revised draft for the scene in which Lively's character and Baldoni's character first meet on the rooftop of the building. Lively explained she revised the scene to include flirty and yummy ball busting. She referred to her choice of dialogue as my love language, spicy and playfully bold, never with teeth. Why did they redact that? That's text messages we've already seen. Her draft called for sexual tension between the characters kissing and retained a line from the book in which Baldoni's character says directly to Lively's character, I want to fuck you. Undisputed. But it's disputed to the extent that this paragraph suggests that Lively was solely responsible for these revisions because Baldoni solicited, encouraged, and approved of Lively's script revisions. Yeah, but it's the rooftop scene. So it wasn't even Lively's revisions. These were Ryan Reynolds. Or am I wrong there? May 5th. Baldoni sent Lively some notes from the script from Sony executive Ange Giannetti, who wanted the scenes to involve more than just verbal interplay. Giannetti wrote, "Other than language, this does not read like an R-rated movie. Readers of the book are expecting some heat. I'm hoping the love scenes are sexy and grown up. Please work to find the balance between sweet, funny, endearing, with moments of real heat." Undisputed, but disputed that this paragraph suggests that the film should have been an R-rated film. What? Well, Ange Giannetti is literally writing, "This does not read like an R-rated movie." It sounds like that's what she was looking for, what Sony were looking for. Okay. So the unredacted Lively immediately exercised substantial influence over the development and shooting of the film. At Wayfarer's request, Wayfarer agreed to abandon its intended filming location, Boston, where Hoover's novel was set, and to accept Lively's choice of New Jersey to accommodate Blake. Okay. Lively's email asserting to PGA asserting, "I led the location shift from Boston to New Jersey." No. She actually wrote to the PGA, "I led the location shift from Boston to New Jersey." Oh, so she did that and she's then submitted it as evidence to get a PGA. Wow. I'm shook. Okay, her response disputed that she immediately exercised substantial influence. Well, if one of the first things you do is change the entire shooting location, that's rather substantial influence. And to the extent that this paragraph suggests that Lively, rather than Wayfarer, was the decision maker for these changes, neither of which are supported by the cited evidence. The decision to move the location to New Jersey was part of arm's length negotiations between Wayfarer and Lively's agent, Warren Zavala, who made clear that Wayfarer could say no and proceed with another actress. So she was already threatening to not partake in filming this unless her demands were met right from before she'd even. Oh my God, before a shot was even signed. Oh. Wow. This is what we all want to hear about. In a letter to the Producers Guild of America, Lively stated that she played a role in numerous aspects of the film's pre-production as follows. "I led the location shift from Boston to New Jersey and helped to solve all cost and schedule logistics associated." Help solved all cost? Woman, you cranked up the cost. The only resolution to the cost problems with this film, that the inflated budget that Lively was responsible for, was the good grace that Steve Sarowitz, who was financing the whole thing, was a billionaire. And they just went and asked him for more money. Had they not had him, she would have ruined this film before it even started. "I personally called and/or wrote emails to crew and put forth names for department head roles, including hair, makeup, director of photography, costume design, transportation, security, camera operators, etc." Oh my God, talk about overstepping. "I identified and onboarded freelance team members for the cast members, not just for myself, to help achieve goals for the screen, including a fitness trainer, nutritionist, meal prep service, spray tanner." Spray tanner? Who the fuck needs a spray tanner? "Wig maker, hair colorist, etc." Fuck. She got all this for the cast members. She says not just for herself, but I know this is negotiated in her contract. "I reviewed and reshaped the creative of the production design for all key locations for all characters. Also made changes to use existing elements of locations to save cost. I called in favors with home design contacts to get items loaned, discounted, or gifted to save production design costs. I reviewed and reshaped the creative of the wardrobe design for all characters. I called in favors with fashion contacts to get items loaned, discounted, or gifted to save the costume design costs." How did she save costume design costs? Like, The budget was more than doubled just on her wardrobe alone. That was without buying any other cast members' wardrobe. Then it turns out most of the crap she was using was her own or her friend or her husband's, and it seems like she was charging Wayfarer to basically buy her clothes. This is wild. I reviewed and reshaped the creative of the prop and floral design for the key film element of the film. The protagonist is a florist. I did reach out to florists all over Instagram and beyond, helping with the marketing activation to feature a florist in the film and connected the best names with production. Wow. I went through hundreds of casting tapes to help find the rest of the cast, including our stars Atlas, Lively's character, Lily Bloom's other love interest, young Lily, young Atlas, and Jenny Bloom, Lily Bloom's mother. I rewrote the script to help improve the role of Jenny Bloom after 3 actresses turned it down. And then it's undisputed. Lively does not dispute it, but she does respectfully refer the court to the cited source for its complete contents and disputes any summary or interpretation. I think we get that. I think we can all read into what happened there. She basically took over the film. In a February 8th, 2023 voice memo, Lively asked if the start of the shooting could be pushed back because she, quote unquote, wanted to be in my best shape. Undisputed. On February 9th, 2023, in response to Baldoni's comment that Lively must feel £1,000 lighter after resolving a personal dilemma, Lively responded, only 20 to go. Again, I don't know why that's redacted. We've seen that. Undisputed. On February 17th, 2023, Lively asked Baldoni, what's the chance we can do the body scenes at the end of the schedule? Baldoni responded, I want you to know you will look amazing. Anything you are insecure about, we will talk through and get creative together and make you comfortable. I just don't want you to stress about your body. It's the last thing you need. Undisputed. Again, we've seen that. I'm not sure why that was redacted. Same day, February 17th, Lively told Warren Zavala, her agent at WME, also, I asked Justin today, but I need their help in boarding the movie so that the body stuff lasts to shoot. I'm working my ass off, literally working out twice a day, 4 hours a day, which is insane. But I'm treating it like my full-time job. And no matter how hard I work, it's a lot to accomplish and not a lot of time. And I want to set us all up for success. The sexiness in this film and marketing, I'm sure, is critical to its success. Everyone see that? The sexiness in this film. That's what she said to her agent. Isn't that sexual harassment by her standards? Oh, I feel like I'm going to be snarky all through this if it keeps going on this kind of thread. In February 18th, message to Baldoni, Lively wrote, I know my job here. As woke as we both are and work to be, this movie requires a certain aesthetic. It's part of the job that we both excitedly signed up for. I don't shy away from it because it's not problematic. Undisputed. April 8th, Lively sent Baldoni her proposed revisions to the rooftop scene in which the 2 main characters first meet. Undisputed. Taylor Swift. Oh, we've got Taylor Swift. On April 12th, 2023, Lively asked her friend, the world-famous musician Taylor Swift, for help, referring to Baldoni as this doofus director of my movie. Doofus? Oh, fucking hell, that's not raising concerns. That's mocking him. She went on to describe him as a clown who thinks he's a writer now. She asked Swift to endorse the revised script she was proposing, even without having read it. You don't have to read it, of course. Undisputed. Oh. Disputed that Lively asked Taylor Swift to endorse the revised script without having read it. And then she quotes in her deposition transcript, and I sent Taylor the script on her way to my apartment because Justin was still there. Hold on a minute. So Taylor Swift did turn up knowing that Justin was still there. And I asked her to read them. I told her she didn't have to. I didn't want her to feel pressured to do that, but I hoped she would. when she was already on her way to Blake Lively's apartment, she sent Taylor Swift a script, wanted her to read it before she got there, knowing that Justin Baldoni was there, and she was wanting Taylor Swift to endorse her revised script. What happened? Hold on a minute. I thought Taylor Swift said, no, I just turned up. Like, I didn't realize the meeting was still going. What happened to that? I thought she had nothing to do with this. But Lively asked her to endorse the revised script to Justin Baldoni. So that was a lie. Swift agreed to do Lively's bidding, texting Lively, I'll do anything for you. What? I'm not surprised, right? I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed here because Swift made a point of coming out and saying, I had nothing to do with it. I just turned up. It was a coincidence. And we all gave her the benefit of the doubt. If she's talking out of her ass. Lively and Swift met with Baldoni at Lively's apartment where Swift endorsed the revised draft. Afterward, Lively wrote to Swift, you were so epically heroic today. I recapped every moment to Ryan. I kept remembering stuff. You making shit up about me and lenses. What? I'm referring to yourself as my doll. This clown falling for all of it, but also resisting it. You are the world's absolute greatest friend ever. Wow, do you know, they sound, the pair of them, like the world's greatest bitches ever. That's disgusting. It's disputed that Swift agreed to do Lively's bidding, met with Baldoni, or endorsed the revised draft. I'm sorry, Blake Lively, but that's not what the fucking text suggests at all. I don't believe you anymore. I didn't believe you anyway, but wow. Undisputed that the quoted language appears in the cited source, but she's disputing that Swift agreed to do Lively's bidding, met with Baldoni, or endorsed the revised draft. Okay, I think that's plain semantics, right? So maybe Swift technically didn't agree to do Lively's bidding. However, her Swift's response of "I'll do anything for you" is kind of agreeing to do whatever she wants her to do. That's shocking. On April 14th, Baldoni told Lively he liked the revised scene. He added that he would have felt that way without Ryan and Taylor. Lively explained that to protect her, like the princess in Game of Thrones, Reynolds and Swift serve as her dragons. Undisputed. But respectfully refers the court to the full documents for their complete contents, including that we all benefit from her friendship with Reynolds and Swift, and you will too, I can promise you. You said that. We've already read those text messages. You said that. That's wild. Okay. Wayfair has a set of industry policies, etc., anti-harassment policies, etc., etc. Undisputed that Wayfair maintains written policies, but disputed just to the extent that the Wayfair parties imply these policies were distributed to, explained to, or available to cast or crew of the film. And I've already said, right, I don't know if it's supposed to work like that. Like, what, harassment training is normally every 2 years. By the sounds of it, Justin Baldoni certainly goes for it every 2 years, according to his own testimony. That sounds like it's it's meant for internal Wayfarer employees, for Wayfarer as an organization. Quite often, cast and crew members are independent contractors. Okay, so they're not part of Wayfarer like long term. They're not employed, and they're not part of the company structure. So I think the analogy I gave is if I hired an electrician, right? If I was, let's just say I'm running a law firm, right? And I hire a contractor, say an electrician or a plumber, right? And I hire them to do some work. Maybe it takes a couple of days or whatever, or, a builder to do an extension on the premises. They're not going to get an induction. They're not going to be put through, anti-harassment training or, be given policy booklets because they're not staying with the company. They're there for a short period of time. I think the sum total of filming for Blake Lively was 16 days. I think Isabella Ferrer had 4 days. Do we need to be given anti-policy and anti-sexual harassment training to all of these people who are coming and going all the time? I didn't think that's how it worked. I mean, I'm I'm in the UK, so maybe it's just that it's different over here, but also, you know, it may I don't know much about the entertainment industry. So for someone out there who can say, actually, no, this is what they should have done that, then fine. I'm happy to say, yeah, okay, they should have done it. And if they didn't do it, then that's not great. It doesn't mean they harassed anyone or retaliated, but it just means that, they should have been on top of it, like in terms of making sure everyone was aware of the policies. But I was very much aware that my mindset, as someone who has worked in employment law, is that policy handbooks are usually for employees and not for anyone who comes and gets paid to do prior to service or something, like an external company or an external contractor who comes, provides a service, and then leaves. But I'm open to being told that no, that actually things are different. We do that. And actually, I would even suggest, right, that supports the notion that Lively was not seen as an employee because she did not get the company policies and handbooks and training. I mean, training every 2 years is quite a reasonable thing, right? To obviously keep up to date with any changes, etc. You wouldn't expect someone to be put through the training every single film, because it's not necessary and it could be too much. Like someone could be like Blake Lively was filming 2 films, one right after another. Did she go into Another Simple Favor? Did she get handbooks? Did she get anti-harassment training? Let's all ask Paul Feig. It's just my thought process. They made a lot in deposition about, oh, did you get a handbook? Did you get the policy? Did you get training? And I think it shouldn't really apply here to casting crew. Mainly because I believe that it's, it is something that would be provided to actual employees, internal employees within the Wayfarer Studios organization. Okay. That's me off my soapbox again. Complaint process, blah blah blah. Right, so that Lively disputes that undisputed that Wayfarer has a policy with the stated information. Dispute to the extent that defendants imply that the policy or information about the complaint process therein was distributed to, explained to, or available to cast or crew of the film. Testimony from cast members confirms that they were not provided with this information. Again, technically, I'm assuming the cast and crew generally, but certainly Blake Lively, she was contracted with When It Ends With Us movies, not Wayfarer. I know that's still up for a bit of a back and forth over the stance on that. But the way I look at it, if you just look at the contract, then It Ends With Us movie was a separate LLC, specifically for reasons around laws and tax and banking. They kept things separate, as you would do for each movie. So would Wayfarer's HR be the place to go with a complaint? And if so, I mean, it could be one of the places, but then why not go to Sony's HR? Also, these people could have gone to their various guilds, the Writers Guild, SAG-AFTRA, the PGA, but they chose not to. I think it's not particularly fair to be saying, well, it's all Wayfarer's responsibility to have a HR. They did have a HR. They had a HR person, but again, I believe my perspective would be that HR person would be available to the internal employees of Wayfarer, and Blake Lively was not an internal employee or at all. No, not an employee at all of Wayfarer. So I don't understand the bug up her ass about, well, they didn't have a HR available. So what? Wayfarer has a human resource department headed by Cynthia Barnes-Slater. Mitz Toskovich assists later. Undisputed, but disputed to the extent that the defendants imply Wayfarer made Slater or any other human resources representative available to cast and crew the film. He's testified that Wayfarer did not have a HR representative specifically for the movie, and he does not recall whether he and Slater discussed. There we go. See, he separated it out as well, specifically for the movie, which suggests that it ends with us movie LLC, not Wayfarer. And he does not recall whether he and Slater discussed her providing support to address cast or crew concerns in connection with the film. He further testified that he deferred human resources issues to Alex Sachs, ultimately, and Jill Sacco, who was our production supervisor, as well as Andrea Agemian, who was our line producer, that if there was concerns, would go to them if there were any brought up. He testified that he did not know if cast and crew were ever informed that human resources concerns could be raised with these individuals. But a hotline was provided on the call sheet. Wayfarer employees. See, again, employees are required to participate in workplace harassment training. Baldoni participated in training approximately every 2 years, and that makes sense. But again, Blake Lively is not a Wayfarer employee. Undisputed that Wayfarer employees are required to participate in workplace harassment training, but disputed to the extent that it suggests that all Wayfarer employees actually completed such training, which is not supported by the cited evidence. Cast testimony confirms they were not given any training or instruction regarding harassment policies. Fuck's sake, woman. That's because Cast are not Wayfarer employees. Sauritz is not involved in the day-to-day, and he's not responsible for administering Wayfarer Studios harassment policies. Let's go into that. Undisputed that Sauritz is not involved in day-to-day, but it is disputed that that Sauritz is not responsible for ensuring a safe workplace. I don't disagree with that. As co-chairman of Wayfarer and signatory of its anti-harassment policies. I don't know how I feel about that. I can see the point she's making. Baldoni further testified that upper management at Wayfarer reports to him and Sauritz, and that he and Sauritz could fire anyone, including the CEO. In April 2023, before filming began, It Ends With Us movie hired Elizabeth Tolbert, that's Lizzie Tolbert, to serve as the intimacy coordinator for the film. And they cite her payroll form signed by Elizabeth Tolbert, LLC. Is everyone an LLC? This is what I mean, cast and crew, independent contractors. Like, they all seem to have their own kind of LLC for the most part. That's undisputed. On April 5th, Baldoni wrote to Lively, I don't know why this was redacted, we've seen it, just hired intimacy coordinator who I love, we'll set you up to meet, FaceTime with her next week for intro. Lively declined the introduction, responding, I feel good, I can meet her when we start. Undisputed, but she respectfully refers to court for the context. Okay. On May 4th, before any filming had began and months before any shooting of the film's intimate scenes would take place, the intimacy coordinator considered the content of anticipated intimate scenes. While expressing concern that the scenes were becoming too PG-13 as compared to the more explicit scenes in the book, Baldoni suggested that the intimacy coordinator discussed with Lively whether there were other ways of implying nudity that she would consider so as not to disappoint readers, while expressing sensitivity for Lively's boundaries. He wrote, I'm fine showing my butt, and then he put in brackets female gaze. I'm fine if Blake just wants to take my clothing off and we make it playful. The goal is to choreograph in a way that keeps Blake's clothes on as much as possible. And that goes to kind of knocking on its head her allegations that he was trying to get her to do nude scenes or unscripted nudity. And she does not dispute that. Okay, the intimacy coordinator then met with Lively to review said vision and set boundaries for purposes of memorializing them in a nudity rider. On or around May 5th, 2023, the intimacy coordinator had a phone call with Lively and her lawyer. The intimacy coordinator explained that her role was to determine Lively's comfort level and boundaries to ensure scenes would be within her consent and boundaries and to provide nudity rider language. She told Lively to contact her if she wanted anything further. Lively did not meet with her again. Oh, undisputed. Except to the extent it suggests Lively, her counsel, and Tolbert discussed any scenes that were not scripted to include nudity or any form of intimacy, including the birth scene. Oh, I can't wait to get to the birth scene. That same day, the intimacy coordinator provided draft language for the nudity rider to Lively. Lively responded, "This is great, thank you." Tolbert sent Lively notes to the film's production attorney for inclusion in Lively's nudity rider. That is undisputed. Okay, so Ainsworth's movie held a respect in the workplace, preventing discriminatory harassment and retaliation meeting on 5th of May 2023. The training was administered by the law firm Mitchell Silberberg and Knupp. Heath and Baldoni both attended and completed that training in advance of filming. Disputed to the extent it suggests that the training was offered or intended for cast or crew, that the training deck in evidence was the one that was provided, or that any cast or crew member was invited or attended, which the cited evidence does not support. Multiple cast members testified that they were unaware of any such training and did not attend. Again, they're not employees technically. So I'm not sure, because that was provided by Ainsworth's movie, and I would expect that most of the cast and crew contracted with Ainsworth's movie. I'm a little more hesitant about saying, "Oh no, they definitely had no obligation." Whereas with Wayfarer, I feel that there's a stronger argument to say, well, they had no obligation to provide policies and training. Okay. Plaintiff's response. Oh no, I've just read that, haven't I? Yeah, I've just read that. During the first phase of filming, Wayfarer distributed a preliminary crew list to the crew that listed Wayfarer's human resources contact Cynthia Barnes-Slater's. Undisputed. Undisputed that preliminary crew list existed and listed Wayfarer's HR representative Cynthia Barnes-Slater's, but disputed that such list or Ms. Barnes-Slater's contact information was distributed to cast and crew, which the cited evidence does not support. Heath testified that Wayfarer did not have a HR representative specifically for the movie. He does not recall whether... we're just repeating ourselves here now. All cast and crew were provided daily call sheets on the evening before each day of filming, which included a hotline number for workplace complaints, including sexual harassment, that directed them to a third-party organisation to assist with any complaints. One of the exhibits shows Lively received such call sheets. Undisputed. Disputed, though, that the hotline number was for workplace complaints, including sexual harassment, and directed any person to an organisation to assist with any such complaints. The call sheets list a safety hotline with a number for Vigilant EHS. Isn't that Yes, Environmental Health and Safety Anonymous Hotline. The cited materials do not state that the hotline was intended for reporting sexual harassment, nor that cast or crew were informed that it could be used for such complaints. Heath testified that he did not know whether the hotline could be used to report sexual harassment as opposed to physical safety concerns. Multiple cast members also testified that they were not aware of any harassment hotline. Okay, I mean, maybe it could have been better stated. I'm not going to disagree with that. None of Lively's sexually explicit scenes or scenes involving simulated nudity were rehearsed or filmed during this initial period. And they cite an August 29th, 2023 message from Angie Giannetti. All of the romantic / sex scenes and abuse still need to be shot. Alex Sachs's deposition. Those scenes were rehearsed and filmed during the later phase of filming without issue or incident. Lively disputes it. A scene involving simulated nudity in which Lively's character gave birth was filmed in May 2023 and unexpectedly, due to Baldoni's same-day decision-making, involved profile nudity as Lively was unclothed from the waist down with only a small piece of fabric covering her genitals. Further disputed to the extent it suggests that all scenes during the later phase of production were filmed with SAG-compliant nudity riders in place. Okay, so we're now on to the birthing scene. Footage of the... Oh, right. So this is referring to the exhibit, which there is an exhibit which is not on the docket because it's kind of either an incompatible file or it's too big. So you're going to have to find an alternative way. It's Exhibit 74, Wayfarers. I can't remember if it's the motion for summary judgment or the... I think it is. I think it's motion for summary judgment, actually. It could be motion for judgment on pleadings. It's one of them. I think it's summary judgment. So footage of the birthing scene shows Lively covered with hospital gown and a prosthetic pregnancy belly. Disputed as incomplete and misleading, while certain footage of the birthing scene shows Lively wearing a hospital gown and prosthetic belly. Production blocked and filmed the scene over several hours using multiple framings and angles, including angles that depicted Lively's side profile fully nude from the chest down. To obtain these shots, the hospital gown was positioned only to cover her breasts with an exposed prosthetic belly and a small thin piece of flat black fabric covering her genital area. During filming, Lively lay on her back with her legs placed in stirrups, while a male actor whom she later learned was a personal friend of Baldoni stood positioned between her legs for the scene. Accordingly, the cited footage does not fully or accurately reflect the partial nudity simulating, blocking, and filming that occurred. Are you kidding? Why? I don't understand that. Why would you be wearing a black thin piece of fabric over the genitals? Normally it would be like skin colored. Modesty patches, I don't know. I mean, Adam Monshine said she wore black shorts. So did Justin Baldoni. Well, so did Wayfarer in their complaint, in their kind of their own complaint and response to Lively, said she was wearing black shorts. Okay. Elizabeth Talbot, the intimacy coordinator for the first phase of filming, testified that pursuant to SAG industry standards, nudity of the type that requires a rider is defined as anything that could be seen beneath a bikini. Nudity riders are not typical for implied nudity where the actor is not physically nude, but is portrayed as such. Undisputed that Talbot's testimony included the quoted language, but disputed to the extent that this testimony is interpreted to suggest that the birthing scene involved only implied nudity or would not have required a nudity rider. While Talbot testified regarding SAG industry definitions of nudity, she also explained that the birthing scene involved a high hip exposure. So you were wearing fucking pants. A high hip exposure that constitutes profile nudity, which would typically require a nudity rider. Talbot further testified that she did not discuss the birthing scene with Lively in advance because Baldoni did not inform her that the scene would include profile nudity, and instead told her that Lively would be in a hospital gown. Talbot testified that she had understood the scene would involve profile nudity. Talbot testified that had she understood the scene would involve profile nudity, she would have discussed it with Lively and would have been present on the set that day. Talbot also testified that she did not recall any nudity in the birthing scene. Although the birthing scene showed a high hip line, Lively did not require or request a nudity rider for that exposure. I remember at that point, right, at the point that she filmed that, she was still refusing to complete and return her nudity rider. Response: undisputed that Talbot testified that the birthing scene showed a high hip line and that Lively did not request a nudity rider in advance of the birthing scene. Otherwise disputed. While Talbot testified she did not recall nudity in the birthing scene, she also explained that the scene involved a high hip profile, which constitutes profile nudity. Talbot further testified that Baldoni did not inform her that he intended the birth scene to include profile nudity. Blah 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 blah. Okay. All right, so that's just repeating the previous objection. The only intimate scene shot in the first phase of production involved two actors other than Lively and Baldoni. The two actors playing the young versions of Baldoni and Lively's characters, the young Lily and young Atlas intimate scene. Well, that's not the young version of Baldoni's character then. Baldoni did not play Atlas. Undisputed that the only simulated sex scene shot in the first phase of production did not involve Lively. Disputed to the extent that intimate scenes may also include profile nudity, which the birth scene shot in May 2023 did include. Lively was not involved in or present during the filming of the young Lily and young Atlas intimate scene. That is undisputed. Thereafter, and before the young Lily and young Atlas intimate scene was filmed, both actors signed nudity riders. They rehearsed the intimate scene with the intimacy coordinator, Baldoni, and the director of photography in advance of filming. Undisputed that the two actors signed nudity riders and rehearsed the intimate scene before filming. Disputed, however, that the actors rehearsed all intimacy in advance of filming. During the rehearsal, intimacy coordinator Talbot was surprised by certain requests Baldoni introduced that were not in the script for what was supposed to be sensitive depiction of two minors' first sexual experience. For example, Baldoni directed young Lily to lick cookie dough off a spoon and look up at her love interest, which Farah felt had an inappropriate adult sexual undertone. For fuck's sake. How is this sexual? Why does that need an intimacy coordinator? I already lost my shit over this when reading Isabella Farah's deposition. This is just ridiculous. They were feeding the part that was originally part of the script, which the intimacy coordinator would have been aware of, was the feeding of the cookie dough on the spoon. The only thing that Baldoni kind of changed was the instruction, the direction to look up at her love interest. So basically, fully clothed, there's no other intimacy. She has a spoon of cookie dough in a gob, and she's told, just look up at his face. He's not nude. Nothing untoward's happening. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing R-rated is happening. Literally, just make eye contact with the guy who's supposed to be your love interest whilst he's affectionately feeding you cookie dough. And this required an intimacy coordinator, the intimacy coordinator, seriously was surprised at this request? What the fuck is this? I mean, Farrah can feel that it has an inappropriate adult sexual undertone all she likes. I just think she's a daft cow myself. What the fuck? This is not a, they're all sitting here like all of this massive lawsuit for sexual harassment, and this is what they're whinging about. Oh, well, you made me look at my co-star, who I was secretly dating, by the way, whilst I was getting a spoonful of cookie dough. Oh my god. Baldoni also raised unscripted content and additional positions, including having Young Lily perform the scene in her underwear. Talbot had to intervene and make clear that any underwear must be full coverage consistent with the nudity riders, which confirmed that there would be no nudity and that the scene had to remain within the established boundaries. Accordingly, although a rehearsal occurred, the cited materials admit that the intimacy coordinator had to correct and limit Baldoni's proposed unscripted additions to ensure compliance with the riders and industry standards. Okay, that may have been an oversight. I don't know. We don't know the full context. I want to see Lizzie Talbot's deposition to see how she describes that. I haven't got to that yet. But okay, so the intimacy coordinator said, "Oh, hold on, no," and then they changed course. But, it was an intimate scene, and I will say this, right? This part here, Baldoni also raised unscripted content and additional positions. Isabella Farah was specifically asked in her deposition, did Baldoni ask you to do any like different positions or any positions that felt too adult? And she said no. So given that this is Lively's response, I tread carefully. I mean, there was no problem with Farah doing the scene in her underwear. It was just that the underwear had to be full coverage. Well, how do we know that that wasn't what she wore was actually a decision taken by Isabella Farah, who, and it was just that Lizzie Talbot just came in and said, "Oh, no. To be compliant with the nudity rights, you've actually got to wear granny panties," as opposed to a thong. There's context missing here. I'm not saying that, it could have been a fuck up by Baldoni, maybe, but at the same time, this is Blake Lively's lawyer has written this, and I know how they love to misrepresent shit. So, I'm treating it cautiously because Farah herself makes a point of saying that Baldoni did not do anything else that made her uncomfortable. She did not even talk about this underwear incident. So, it did not come up in the excerpts that we saw. Well, then there was quite a lot of excerpts, but also on the question where she was asked, "Oh, was there any other incidents other than 3 specific incidents, none of which included that underwear situation?" She said there were no other instances where she felt uncomfortable. Following the filming of the scene, Isabella Ferreira, the actor playing a young version of Lively's character, wrote to the film's intimacy coordinator. "Thank you so much for your help. You were incredible. And given I've never done that before, it felt like it was the easiest thing ever. So thank you." Undisputed, but it is disputed, to summary or interpretation inconsistent herewith. When questioned about this text at her deposition, Ferreira testified that the message accurately reflected how she felt at the time about working specifically with intimacy coordinator Talbot, while also noting other issues related to filming the intimate scene. Farah described how she felt uncomfortable when Baldoni commented that was hot immediately following the intimate scene. On the same day, Farah stated that Baldoni proposed adding an unscripted scene in which young Lily would lick cookie dough off a spoon while looking at her co-star in a sexually suggestive manner. No one said it was sexually suggestive. It does not say. Isabella Ferreira does not say it was sexually suggestive. She said she felt it was inappropriate, but she also just describes it as looking up at, the other person's face. They're locking eyes with them. Which she considered inappropriate. Right, okay. Additionally, Ferreira testified that while en route to rehearse the intimate scene, Baldoni pulled co-star Alex Neustadt aside and said, "I really want you to get to know Isabella well," and winked to him, which made her uncomfortable and feel sexualized because she had just met Alex, and that was my director, and to insinuate something of that kind of manner I found to be inappropriate. Isabella Ferreira didn't even find out about that conversation until months later, by which time they were dating. We have no context. There is hearsay. That's not even admissible. It's hearsay. She is recanting something that she was told by somebody else. They have not deposed the young Atlas, and there doesn't seem to be any discovery from him. Don't know, like, we've just got her word that he winked at someone else that she wasn't there to see it for herself. This is just crap. Okay, Isabella Ferreira went right. So we're talking about the text she wrote to Baldoni, thanking him for the incredible safe experience on the set. Blah blah blah. I'm not going to read it because we've read it a dozen times. Undisputes. When questioned about this text at her deposition, Ferreira testified at the time that she wrote it. The statement accurately reflected her general feeling about the workplace environment. She explained that two things can coexist: feeling welcomed and supported while also experiencing inappropriate conduct. Ferreira further clarified that her comments were about the overall environment and creative support, not about specific incidents that later made her uncomfortable. Well, why are you messaging Justin Baldoni if he made you so uncomfortable? Why not message someone else like Alex Sachs? I don't believe this. I think she's been coached to say this, because why would you specifically message the person, regardless of whether he's your director or not? Why would you message him? Out of all the people you could have messaged saying thank you for the safe in space you gave and blah blah blah, why would you message him? Besides which, her message to Baldoni specifically actually says, "You are such a wonderful, smart, sincere director, and you created such a comfortable space for me to feel like I could fully step into this role. I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming environment." How can you try to reframe that and say, no, I was just talking about generally about the workplace environment? No, she was quite specific there. She said, Justin Baldoni was a wonderful, smart, and sincere director, and he created the safe environment. You can't just walk that back and say, oh, no, I weren't talking about you. I sent you the message, and yes, in the message I was specifically referring to you. I specifically referenced you being a wonderful, smart, and sincere director. But no, it weren't about you. It's just about the general environment. These women are just talking shit. I'm getting cynical again. I've been cynical all night because I'm just so disappointed with all of this. In a deposition, Lively claimed she was uncomfortable with comments Baldoni made to her in their initial meeting. Oh, here we go. Circumcision gate. In December 2022, before she'd even agreed or begun to work on the film, Baldoni flew to New York City to meet Lively for the first time to discuss the possibility of casting her in the film. They met in her penthouse apartment where her family and various household employees were also present. Undisputed that the meeting took place at Lively's apartment, but disputed that it's a penthouse. Well, what is it then? Buckingham Palace? Which is not accurate. Oh, God, right. So that's her bone of contention here, is that her apartment is not a penthouse. Lively was pregnant at the time. She and Baldoni had been discussing different medical decisions people make these days, including circumcisions for male babies. Why would she just circumcise her baby just because it's a boy? Is she Jewish? Is Ryan Reynolds Jewish? I don't believe they are. Why would you just do that? Lively was pregnant at the time. She and Baldoni had been discussing different medical decisions people make these days, including circumcision for male babies, a question Lively herself may have introduced. Baldoni talked about the decision that he and his wife made for their child and then offered that he was circumcised. That's undisputed. So she's not disputing that she actually brought the topic up. Lively did not complain to Baldoni or anyone else affiliated with Wayfarer at that time about these comments. Lively does not recall mentioning these comments to her agent before she accepted the role. Disputed, Lively told her husband and her agent about the comment, but does not recall when. Okay, but the actual statement says, the Wayfarer statement says, Lively does not recall mentioning these comments to her agent before she accepted the role. Her husband is not her agent, but if you don't recall when you said the comment, no, I don't know. Did you say it before you accepted the role? Does it really matter? Because you did actually accept the role, and you didn't put that in. She did not put that in her complaint. On February 28th, 2023, after that initial meeting, Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, wrote to Baldoni, "We're also big fans of you over here since before we met and more so after. Thank you again for all you're doing. I happen to adore you, Justin." Undisputed. Baldoni, who suffers from chronic back issues, asked in anticipation of a scene in which he was expected to lift her. April 24th, 2023, text from Lively to a friend stating that Baldoni asked about her weight because he's worried about his back and bone density and wants to be sure that he's okay to lift me up for our sex scenes. So she fucking knew about that. She knew exactly why he'd made that inquiry. Disputed. The cited testimony does not state that Baldoni suffers from chronic back issues, and defendants identify no evidence supporting that assertion. Okay. Again, there's no evidence that Lively suffers from intentional infliction of emotional distress. And she has not identified any evidence supporting that assertion. I mean, it's well known Justin Baldoni has got significant back issues. He had them long before the filming of this film. He was in hospital almost immediately after the production, I think it was. After, he'd finished the kind of the post-production before the premiere. He was in hospital. He's had surgery. He's had stem cell therapy. Lively seems to have followed a lot of what's happened in his past and used it against him. You'd think she would have come across the part where he talked about his back issues. Okay, so what's this meeting? This is the meeting in April about what Don Saladino said about the weight. I've read the bits that are not highlighted, so I'm going to go past them. Lively subsequently described the meeting to a friend as follows. I had a 3-hour meeting with him today. He had a bit of that meltdown today when I told him. He audibly sobbed. This man is terrified of women. Oh, undisputed. I bet she capitalized on that. Wow. Okay, okay, we're talking about the health coach that we saw. Baldoni wanted to get probiotics because Lively kept having time off with strep throat. Undisputed as to the allegation of Lively's second amended complaint and that Lively was not asked about this incident during the deposition. So they're saying that Lively's offered no evidence that this health coach was, put in touch with Lively to discuss diet and weight loss. and she didn't talk about it during her deposition. She's saying, yeah, that's not disputed. I was also not asked about it during my deposition. Otherwise disputed, Baldoni introduced Lively to his personal health coach, who Lively later learned specialized in weight loss and was eager to recommend for how she could work on fat loss. Okay, but where's the evidence? Where is the evidence of that? Okay. On or about May 4th, 2023, Baldoni worked with Elizabeth Tolbert, the film's intimacy coordinator, to add specifics to the intimate scenes. He suggested Talbot discuss scenes with Lively and to determine how to portray more sexual intimacy in a manner consistent with Lively's personal boundaries and preferences. Undisputed, but disputed as construed as identifying all intimate scenes filmed. It's further disputed that Exhibit 57 reflects any suggestion by Baldoni that Talbot discuss the scenes with Lively to determine how to portray more sexual intimacy in a manner consistent with Lively's personal boundaries and preferences. Wayfarer Exhibit 57 instead reflects Baldoni's random thought that most sex scenes have some sort of breast touching and they could be used as a way to cover the breast as well. His concern about the film becoming too PG-13 and his comment that it may just be worth that conversation of what she's comfortable with versus it actually coming from me. So I wonder if that should be something that you discussed versus put in writing. On or about May 5th, Lively and Talbot exchanged messages indicating that the scenes would be revised consistent with Lively's preferences. Lively disputes this. The exhibit does not support the characterization that the scenes would be revised consistent with Lively's preferences. The messages in Wayfarer's Exhibit 56 reflect only proposed revisions and do not indicate that any changes were agreed upon or implemented. Wayfarer. Lively claims that Baldoni explained his proposed addition of a sex scene featuring a simulated simultaneous orgasm by stating that he and his wife experienced climax at the same time and asked if Lively and her husband did the same. That he mentioned a previous addiction to pornography and that he commented that some of the most precious experiences with his wife were bringing her to orgasm with reciprocation. Lively does not dispute that. So that's Wayfarer stating Lively's claims, not saying that they're true. Lively then told Baldoni she's never seen pornography. Undisputed. Such a conversation took place in the context of planning and choreographing a sex scene. Lively first volunteered her own personal experience before Baldoni shared his. Disputed. This discussion took place in the context of Lively expressing to Baldoni her discomfort with the fact that scenes had become more gratuitous and that they felt, in some cases, somewhat pornographic. In the context of that creative discussion, not choreography, Baldoni volunteered that he and his wife orgasm at the same time and asked Lively if her husband and she do the same. After Baldoni's disturbing departure into personal conversations, Lively disclosed that she had never seen pornography as a deflection. Lively claims that sometime in May 2023, Baldoni told other members of the cast and crew that she had never seen pornography. Undisputed. Okay, so the trailer, they had a brief conversation concerning a work-related issue. Lively's deposition transcript indicating that the conversation was 5 minutes. Heath's deposition transcript indicating that the conversation was between 2 and 3 minutes. Undisputed that Heath entered Lively's makeup trailer on May 16th, 2023, and that Lively was having her makeup removed, but otherwise disputed as incomplete and misleading. Lively was having her body makeup, not facial makeup, removed at the time. The conversation concerned issues that arose on the first day of filming, including Baldoni's comments about Lively's appearance. Okay, so this is about Heath seeking to schedule a meeting with Baldoni, Lively, Giannetti after several failed attempts. Lively said they could meet her at a makeup trailer to discuss the timing for the meeting. Disputed as incomplete and misleading. On the second day of filming, May 16th, 2023, Lively requested a meeting with the production team. That meeting was very important to Lively because it was to discuss other behaviour she had experienced earlier that day that was concerning to her. Heath arrived unannounced at Lively's hair and makeup trailer while her team, Anne Carroll and Vivian Baker, was removing her body makeup. Lively was wearing only a thong with her breasts exposed. Okay. Heath knocked on Lively's trailer door and Lively permitted him to come in. That meeting was very important to me. So Lively's deposition, that meeting was very important to me. So I said, okay, fine, you can come in. Lively, disputed. When Heath knocked on the trailer door, Lively, Carroll, and Baker screamed, whoa, 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 and no, don't come in. Heath entered anyway. Lively told Heath that she was undressed and would be out in a minute, but Heath said, if we don't meet now, we can't do that meeting. Lively wasn't comfortable with Heath coming in the first place, but said, okay, you can come in on the condition that Heath not look at her. Before the door was opened, we were screaming, don't come in. She asked me to look away, so whatever she was doing, she didn't want me to. Sure. And what was she doing was something that had to do with her breast being exposed or involved? Okay. I mean, Lively asked Heath to turn round while he was speaking to her, and he did. In Lively's deposition, and he came in, and I said, okay, you can come in, but please don't look. Can you turn around? So he turned around and faced the wall. Undisputed that Lively directed Heath to turn around and that he initially did so. Disputed that Heath faced away from Lively throughout the conversation, during which he stared straight at her and looked at her exposed breasts. Lively confronted Heath in the moment, and he admitted looking, saying, oh, sorry, I like to make eye contact with people when I talk to them. They got a real bug up their ass about eye contact, but I mean, eye contact is not the same as looking at your breasts. Like, which one was it? Lively told Heath he had to leave, and at that point he did. Lively has testified that Heath subsequently glanced at Lively through a mirror, despite agreeing to turn away while they spoke. Disputed that Heath subsequently glanced at Lively through a mirror. Lively testified that she was sitting in front of a mirror when Heath insisted on entering a trailer. She told him, please don't look, and to turn around and face the wall. Lively turned to Heath and saw that he was staring straight at her while her breasts were exposed, and she was only wearing a thong and no longer facing the wall. Right, okay, so 2 weeks after this incident occurred and months before litigation arose, Lively raised the incident with Heath for the first time. She told Heath, I told you to look away, and at some point you made eye contact with me. I'm not saying you were trying to cop a look. I'm just saying I had asked you to turn away and you made eye contact with me. After expressing her displeasure, Lively moved on to other topics. Disputed. Lively raised her concerns with Heath looking at her exposed chest without consent immediately upon realizing he was doing so. Lively promptly instructed, you need to leave. The next day, she confronted Heath to advise him that his conduct was inappropriate. I think I'm going to do a part 2 and split this up a bit because this is a really long document. I'm only on 40 pages into 259. So, and we're already gone an hour and 15 minutes nearly. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to move on to a part 2.